The clock on the wall ticked away the seconds with a hollow resonance. In the dimly lit room of a dilapidated apartment in downtown Chicago, the air was thick with the scent of stale cigarettes and the weight of countless unsolved mysteries. Detective Jack Harris sat at his desk, his fingers drumming an impatient rhythm on a stack of case files. The city's pulse had grown erratic over the past few months, as a series of chilling crimes had left the community paralyzed with fear. Jack had seen his share of gruesome cases, but something about this latest spree gnawed at his instincts. The victims, all young women, had no discernible connection. Each crime scene was meticulously staged, with the same ominous calling card left behind. A single strand of frayed thread, deliberately placed where police would find it. The media had dubbed the perpetrator the Weaver, a name that sent shivers down Jack's spine. The phone on his desk rang, shattering the silence. Jack answered, his voice a mix of exhaustion and determination. "Harris." "Detective, we've got another one," said the voice on the other end, belonging to his partner, Officer Lisa Turner, coroner of Michigan Avenue and 12th Street. "It's bad." Jack felt a surge of adrenaline as he grabbed his coat and headed out into the chilly night. The city streets were eerily quiet, the usual bustle of activity replaced by an unsettling stillness. As he approached the crime scene, the flashing lights of patrol cars painted the buildings in shades of red and blue. Lisa met him at the scene, her expression grim. "Same M.O., she said, leading him to the victim's body. Young woman, early 20s. No signs of struggle. Jack knelt beside the body, his eyes tracing the familiar pattern of the weaver's handiwork. The frayed thread lay next to the victim's outstretched hand, a mocking taunt from the killer. He clenched his fists, his mind racing to piece together the fragments of the puzzle. Why the thread? Lisa mused aloud. What does it mean? Jack shook his head. It's a signature, a twisted message. But we're missing something. There's a connection we're not seeing. As they continued to comb through the scene for clues, Jack's thoughts drifted to his own past. He had joined the force to make a difference, to bring justice to those who had been wronged. But as the Weaver's web of terror tightened around the city, he couldn't shake the feeling that this case would test the very core of his resolve. Days turned into weeks, and the body count continued to rise. The Weaver seemed always one step ahead, leaving Jack and Lisa grasping at straws. Each victim's story added another layer of complexity to the enigma, and the pressure to catch the killer mounted with every passing hour. One evening, as Jack sat in his apartment, staring at the evidence board that dominated his living room, a knock at the door jolted him from his thoughts. He opened it to find Lisa standing there, her eyes alight with newfound determination. I think I found something, she said, handing him a folder. Look at this. Jack flipped through the documents, his brow furrowing as he read. These are all adoption records. What am I looking for? All the victims, Lisa explained, were adopted as infants from the same orphanage. The threads, the connection, it's in their past. A chill ran down Jack's spine as the pieces began to fall into place. The Weaver's victims weren't chosen at random. They were being targeted for a reason buried deep in their history. We need to talk to the orphanage staff, Jack said, grabbing his coat. There has to be someone who remembers these children. Their visit to the orphanage yielded more questions than answers. The records were incomplete, and many of the staff members had long since retired or passed away. But one name stood out, a former caretaker named Mary, who had worked at the orphanage during the time the victims were adopted. Jack and Lisa tracked down Mary to a small, unassuming house on the outskirts of the city. The elderly woman greeted them with a wary smile, her eyes clouded with memories. I remember those children, she said, her voice tinged with sadness. They were all abandoned at the orphanage within the span of a few months. It was such a strange time. Do you remember anything unusual about their adoptions? Jack asked. Mary hesitated, her gaze distant. There was one couple, the Harrisons. They were different. They adopted a little girl named Emily, but they were always so secretive. They left Chicago shortly after the adoption, and I never heard from them again. Jack's heart quickened. Emily Harrison. She wasn't one of the victims, was she? Lisa shook her head. No, she wasn't. Then maybe she's a key, Jack said. We need to find her. Their search for Emily Harrison led them to a remote town in rural Indiana. The residents were tight-lipped, but after some gentle persuasion, they directed Jack and Lisa to a modest house at the edge of the settlement. Emily greeted them with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. She was in her late 20s, with a quiet strength that belied the tragedy of her past. "I'm sorry to intrude," Jack began, "but we believe you may be in danger. There's a serial killer targeting women who were adopted from the same orphanage as you." Emily's eyes widened in shock. "Why? What connection do we have?" "We're still trying to figure that out," Lisa said gently. "But we need to know if there's anything you can tell us about your adoption. Anything at all." Emily led them into her home and pulled out a dusty box from a closet. Inside were old photographs, letters, and a worn diary. She handed the diary to Jack. "This belonged to my adoptive mother," she explained. "She passed away a few years ago, but she always said there were secrets she couldn't share." As Jack flipped through the pages, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The entries detailed a clandestine group that had been trafficking infants and arranging illegal adoptions. The Weaver's victims had all been unwitting pawns in this dark web. "We need to expose this," Jack said, his voice resolute. "But first, we need to keep Emily safe." They arranged for Emily to stay in a safe house while they continued their investigation. The diary provided a wealth of information, leading Jack and Lisa to a network of corrupt officials and criminals. The Weaver's motive became clearer. He was seeking vengeance for the children who had been lost in the system. But as they closed in on the truth, the Weaver struck again, this time leaving a message for Jack. "Justice is frayed, and so are you." The taunt was a gut punch, a reminder that the Weaver was always watching. Jack knew they were running out of time. With the help of the diary, they uncovered the identity of the Weaver, a man named David, who had been one of the trafficked infants. He had grown up in the shadows, fueled by a desire for revenge against those who had torn his life apart. Jack and Lisa tracked David to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. As they approached, the air was thick with tension. They knew this confrontation would be their last chance to stop the Weaver. Inside, the warehouse was a labyrinth of darkness and decay. Jack's heart pounded as they moved cautiously through the corridors, the sound of their footsteps echoing ominously. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. David, holding a knife to Emily's throat. Her eyes were wide with terror, but she remained remarkably composed. "Let her go, David," Jack said, his voice steady. "It's over." David's eyes were filled with a mix of rage and sorrow. "You don't understand," he spat. "They ruined our lives. They deserve to pay." "You're right," Jack said softly. "But this isn't the way. We can bring them to justice the right way." For a moment, the tension hung the air like a fragile thread. Then, with a sob of defeat, David released Emily and dropped the knife. Jack and Lisa quickly restrained him, relief washing over them. As they escorted David to the waiting patrol car, Jack couldn't help but feel a pang of empathy for the man who had been shaped by a lifetime of suffering. The frayed threads of justice had finally begun to mend, but the scars would remain. Back at the station, Jack and Lisa sifted through the final pieces of case, their exhaustion tempered by a sense of accomplishment. The Weaver's reign of terror was over, but the echoes of his crimes would linger in the hearts of the city. As Jack gazed out the window, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road to justice was long and fraught with challenges, but he was ready to face whatever lay ahead, determined to ensure that the threads of justice never frayed again. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this story, kindly like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you.